Well, another year, another Satsconf. Pleasure to be here again. This time we have really big names here on stage. So without further ado, let's talk about the future of Lightning. So maybe we can start talking about how you guys are seeing devs enhance the user experience. What cool products are you guys seeing that you like, what you don't like? Conor, can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. Thanks for having us. So yeah, we're seeing a lot of range with the types of products that are being built on Lightning. I can specifically talk to from the LDK perspective. So anyone who doesn't know what LDK is, LDK stands for the Lightning Development Kit, and it's a implementation of the Lightning Network kind of packaged as an SDK. So it allows developers to implement Lightning in a range of different environments, in self-custodial mobile, in enterprise environments, in secure environments such as hardware security modules, and it provides a suite of APIs that are very flexible for you to use, so you can create experiences that are very customizable. So for example, you can choose how you source blockchain data or how you do backups for private keys and Lightning State. And you can also, it's also exposed as in a number of different programming languages as well. So the core library is written in Rust, but you don't have to be a Rust developer to use it. You can use Kotlin or Swift or Java and some other languages as well. And we've seen developers use it to build stuff such as wallets in the browser. So I don't know if anyone here has used Mutiny Wallet or have heard of Mutiny. Mutiny is a really good example of a self-custodial wallet that's built as a progressive web app. So the node is running inside the browser itself, and they've been able to leverage LDK to create a really slick and smooth user experience such that the average user doesn't have to worry about managing liquidity. They don't have to worry about managing private keys and backups and that kind of stuff. So they get a really smooth UX and enhanced censorship resistance in that it runs in the browser, and so it doesn't require third-party app stores like Google or Apple. So that's like a really good example. I think you can find them at mutinywallet.com. So I'd encourage people to play around with that for sure.
And Mutiny runs a node in your browser, correct? Tadge, did you expect use cases like that, or like people running nodes on their mobile phones, like Zeus is launching right now?
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely one of the questions. Is like, how can you run a node? And if you're running a Lightning node, do you connect to a Bitcoin full node? Do you trust that? Are you running with SPV? There's a lot of questions there. And then another question that I'm looking at where in my role right now is like hardware wallets. So we thought about this very early on in Lightning, but it was sort of like, that's a good question. How do we do, hardware wallet for Lightning? Anyway, there's a million other things to work on, and so we wouldn't really focus on it. But I think that is going to become a focus, especially where I work. It's not as much consumer focus as like with businesses using Lightning. And especially for like exchanges, they are the main thing that they're hesitant about is like, well, wait, all the keys are in sort of this computer, and we're an exchange, we always have our keys separate. We have, multi-sig with 4 of 6 or, whatever multi-sig. And Lightning itself is using multi-sig, right? The channel is 2 computers sharing Bitcoin by both having a key. But then you could sort of have this nested multi-sig where a node can have multiple keys itself. And that's not happening this year, that's maybe not even happening next year, but like it sort of seems like that's inevitably what we're going to be doing a lot of work on for like larger businesses and exchanges and banks and places who want to use Lightning but want it to be not just tied into one computer. So there's like the phone side where it's like, okay, we want a very small wallet where it's running in a phone or a browser, and in that side you're looking at like resource constraints. And then on the other side there's, okay, we have servers, we have a bank, we have a exchange, but we want to separate it so that no one computer controls the whole thing. So there's sort of both directions people are working on right now.
Cool. And talking about companies that use Lightning, we have Alex here from River. I thought that Lightning was dead, Alex, but your report shows otherwise, right? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So for those who haven't seen it, my company, River.com, we put out a Lightning report. We've done it for the last 2 years in a row. We'll make it an annual tradition because it seems to be quite popular. The report this year focused on the growth that we've seen in the Lightning Network. And one of the differences this year was that we actually got data sets on Lightning numbers from some of the biggest companies operating nodes on the Lightning Network. And through the data analysis, we came up with a lower bound that the Lightning Network transaction volume growth has been over 1,200% in the last 2 years. So we've seen very promising numbers in terms of the usage of the Lightning Network. And we have a lot of other cool charts and statistics in there breaking down what we're seeing in the ecosystem. We also have a really cool map of all of the different types of companies and the category of companies playing in the Lightning space, some of whom are outside with booths, who you should definitely check out. And it's also been really, really impressive to see the maturity of the developer tooling over the last few years with companies like with Spiral working on LDK, with Lightspark. We have a custodial Lightning API at River. Really, developers have a wide variety of choices now to build. And so I would say actually now I think the brain power in Lightning needs to start going a little bit more product thinking. I think there's been a lot of progress in developer tooling, and my take on things is the hard work left ahead is the product side.
Cool. It's interesting because we have a lot of devs working on wallets, and maybe sometimes they think of other devs using and not actual users. So what do you guys think that we can enhance to bring Lightning to more people in this product perspective?
Yeah, I mean, just to echo what Alex is saying as well, I think over the last, 6 to 12 months as well, we have seen a lot of big companies adopt Lightning, your Coinbases of the world, your Binances of the world. So that's really good. And then one thing to mention as well is that building on Lightning is difficult. It's very difficult. There are a lot of moving pieces. And providing a developer user experience that is simple is also something that we've been working on. Many of the implementations have. We have created something as well called LDK Node, which is like a ready-to-go Lightning implementation. So you don't necessarily need to have all of the background knowledge required to create secure Lightning applications, but rather have some sensible defaults provided for you and a smaller API surface to work with, which then, to your question, kind of opens the door for people to focus on the UX a bit more. Don't have to worry about which we can talk about a little bit later, but issues of like inbound liquidity, which prevents users from being able to receive automatically or instantly, rather, being able to receive payments offline, especially if you're in mobile environments, and all of these kind of issues that we see with Lightning that have solutions that are kind of on their way. So in a nutshell, there are solutions that are on their way that are going to make it easier for product teams to craft custom user experiences, I would say.
Awesome. And Lightning,
Go
ahead. Yeah.
I just have another thought on that. I've talked to a lot of companies in the space now, exchanges, and other businesses who are thinking about Lightning, and I've come to a few conclusions. I think that, and obviously this is not absolute, but my own sort of directional opinion is that Lightning's success is sort of very correlated to Bitcoin's success as a medium of exchange. I think Bitcoin has very clear product market fit as a store of value, and hence on-chain wallets are very popular. Bitcoin is still in a very early phase, and it's still to be determined how successful it becomes as a medium of exchange. So I think there's really kind of two different approaches here when it comes to building Lightning products that people want to use. One is to figure out how to make Bitcoin more compelling as a medium of exchange. There are some fundamental things that make it difficult, such as the volatility and sort of usability around Lightning, which some of those are solvable. The other is to lean more into using Lightning for the thing people really want as a medium of exchange, which is dollars, which is also an approach we're seeing people take with Taproot assets, and also the universal money addresses from Lightspark, which is sort of kind of leaning into this reality that people want fiat for payments, but Lightning could be a cool connector for those things. So those are like kind of the two categories of product thinking I'm seeing from people.
I can sort of relate to that very much just today. It's called Gresham's Law, right? Where it's like, yeah, I have Bitcoin, I want to store it, I think it's going to go up. And then today I was like, oh, I should get a snack. And I'm like, they want Bitcoin for everything here. I'm like, but I kind of want to spend the reals because, I'm going back to America in a few days. I can get rid of these, but I want to keep my Bitcoin. So it's an interesting mindset thing. Maybe for people who are newer to it, it's more like you can spend it, trade it. But for a lot of people, it's also mental. Like I want to keep my Bitcoins. Whereas if it's some other asset, it's like, yeah, sure, I'll spend that. So.
You can also spend and replace. Like you don't need to just spend. Yeah. Cool. So. We are hearing a lot about covenants in the Bitcoin space. Developers are starting to discuss this. There's a lot of soft forks proposals. What do Lightning get from covenants? What can we have if covenants are enabled on Lightning?
I mean, I can say there's a lot of different proposals and a lot of different things. So you can't. I don't think you can say one thing, but I think one of the big ideas is we still need more scalability. And that's one of the things people are thinking about. That is not an issue for today or next year, but long term, if we want millions or billions of people using this, we're still limited in a lot of ways. And some of the earliest ideas are like, okay, how do we, right now Lightning channels have two people, right? There's Alice and Bob, your node and the other node. And of course, the obvious thing is, well, let's have 3 people or 4 people or 100 people. And so there's a lot of different ideas that look like Lightning but have many people. And you see in other things like roll-ups are somewhat like this, or channel factories, or lots of different ideas of like, okay, let's take the idea of sort of layer 2 or a network of channel-like things, but put lots of participants in. And that will allow better usability and like lower fees, because instead of you sharing it with one, you're sharing a UTXO with one other person, you could share a UTXO with 100 other people. And so some of the soft forks and covenant opcodes look like they can help enable that kind of technology.
Conor, is LDK already taking a look at this, starting developing something in this way, or you guys are worrying get V1 out for people to use?
No, we're not looking at covenants just yet. I think many of our priorities are determined by like what our users want. So some of the things that are definitely here and coming very soon are stuff like Bolt 12. So I don't know how familiar people are with like the invoice formats on Lightning, but Bolt 12 will open up a number of different use cases, especially around static payment formats and reoccurring payments and subscriptions and things of that nature. So that was just released recently in 1.18 in LDK. So if there are developers in the crowd, feel free to play around with that. We're also interested in splicing, which is probably coming in the first half of 2024. So splicing enables you to change the channel value of your channels, essentially. And also asynchronous payments, which is a protocol for enabling offline receiving as well. So Covenant's not quite on the roadmap, but who knows, like if there's strong consensus. These things as well, like we tend to look to what our users want, who are using LDK specifically, but we also look for like wider Bitcoin consensus, and we're still very early in that phase of whether it's even a good idea, you know, so slow and steady kind of wins the race with these kind of things, I think.
So you touched on async payments, right? And I think last week we had a little bit of controversy on this topic with Zeus using HODL payments. What do you guys think about that?
I mean, so for people who are not aware, the way Lightning sends these payments is through HTLCs. And it's sort of like you send the payment and it might fail. It might not get to the destination, but it's safe. So if it doesn't get there, it bounces back. And usually this takes a few seconds, right? You send a payment, it goes through the network, and they receive it, okay, and you receive confirmation, or it fails, and that should take a few seconds. But this HODL idea, the HODL whatever payment, is the idea that if someone's offline, they just hold on to it until the next person's online and then send it through. And so some people think this is not a good experience, and it hurts the nodes in between. It's true, and it's a permissionless network, so you can do this, but you can also perhaps see nodes say, hey, I won't connect to you anymore because you're making these invoices, you're making these payments that take hours. It's supposed to take seconds, and that's like tying up my capacity. So as long as it's like small and only a few people doing it, it's probably like a little annoying, but doesn't really do anything bad. But if it becomes like widespread, it won't really scale. It won't really work. And so that's maybe a reason to say, this isn't really a great solution long term. But then again, Lightning is a very adversarial, like Bitcoin's supposed to be a very adversarial network. And so you have to expect, people are going to do weird things. Hopefully you're able to deal with it. So I can sort of see the controversy there. I'm not like too worried about it, but it is sort of like, yeah, this isn't going to work going forward. So do you guys agree? I don't know.
Yeah, and just at a higher level, I think this is just one of the a category of things that really illustrate that self-custody Lightning for consumers is very challenging, and I think that's why what we're seeing is like a lot of businesses focusing on trying to serve the exchanges and the custodial businesses, because they can just run one Lightning node that's always online and not have to worry about things like this. So I'd say this is like one of a category of things which is making self-custody LN close to as usable and compelling as on-chain.
Did River's node already suffered a little bit with people not confirming payments and holding to invoices?
I don't know the latest numbers, but I think we've seen a little bit of it. It's always hard to know exactly why a payment takes a while. So we don't have necessarily certainty that that's the reason. But it hasn't been too much of an issue to date.
Cool. And recently, you guys are, also closed a bunch of channels, caused a little bit of controversy as well. Can you talk about like payment reliability and how it's misleading to say like, okay, they're closing channels, so payment reliability is going down? It's not really like that, right? Yeah.
So what happened was, I forget when. Time is sort of crazy, but I think maybe it was 3 or 4 months ago. I just sort of offhanded told my team like, hey, we have too many Bitcoin hot on our node. I want to get some Bitcoin off, close the channels we don't need. And then and they did. And the next day I woke up to all these tweets asking like, is River hacked? What's going on? Because our public node capacity just went down a ton. And so that was a learning experience, one, that when you're running a big node that communications is important publicly before you take big actions. So it ended up being all fine, like kind of a good marketing sort of drama. But so that was one lesson learned. But then the second one was we really leaned into this and then tried to use this as and I think we've helped change the narrative of that the public capacity of the Lightning Network is not the thing that everyone should really be focused on. It's like it's a decently relevant number, but we haven't seen any hit to our payment success rates from closing all of these channels. We just didn't need all of this Bitcoin hot, or neither did our peers. A lot of that capacity was just like channels we had automatically opened with peers that were drained on our side that the peers just never closed. So they had a bunch of Bitcoin hot, big exchanges that just don't care about 100 Bitcoin kind of thing. And so we use this as sort of a way to kind of change the narrative. Like, yes, the capacity of the network has dropped, but our payment processing rates are high, and that's why this number isn't useful. And we also tried to lean into that in the Lightning report, which is like the real way to look at the success of the Lightning Network is not this capacity number. It's getting data from the people running nodes, from the businesses operating, and looking at that. So overall, I would say it's been a big, I think it's a positive shift in the conversation.
Awesome. Tadge, did you expect that Lightning will grow so fast, as River's report showed?
Yeah, I mean, there's no way to expect, know what's going to happen. But it is kind of interesting that initially, like a long time ago, the people who didn't like Lightning were like, oh, you're locking Bitcoins, and so it's like, and now it's kind of interesting that the metric is, oh, how many Bitcoin are locked? Or like in a lot of weird things, they're like, oh, TVL, like total value locked. I'm like, well, but that's bad. Efficiency is locking only a little bit and then being able to make lots of payments. But also, I don't even like the idea of locked as a term, because to me it's like, if you have Bitcoin on a Lightning channel, it's more liquid than a regular on-chain, UTXO, because you can potentially spend it through the Lightning Network very quickly, or you can spend it the normal way by closing a channel and sending it somewhere just as quick as a normal wallet without a channel. So it's I sort of say like, no, it's unlocked, But yeah, it is really interesting to see all these, metrics. And one of the hard parts about it is we don't have good data, right? Like we have pretty good data, but it's all estimates, right? Like private channels are potentially larger than all the public channels. I know where I work, most of the channels are private just because we don't want to reveal those things. And that's one of the things Lightning lets us do. And that, I think, will be even more the case, next year or so when we have sort of taproot channels. And then, just looking on chain, you won't be able to tell that any channel is a channel. And then even the linkages between, right now when you announce a node and announce a channel, you sort of are able to link it to the on-chain UTXO. That's probably going to change with taproot channels, so that you prove that you have some Bitcoin to prevent denial of service, but you don't sort of point to your channel on chain. And so that's really good from privacy perspective, and I think privacy is like a super important part. But the downside, I think it's totally worth it, is you do lose a lot of the metrics. You do lose a bit of like, wait, what is happening in this network? How big is it? How successful things are? And you can ask people directly. But that's one of the challenges with a lot of open source and Bitcoin software is you can't really put analytics, or you can't really put telemetry. You can't put telemetry in LDK or Bitcoin Core or something, because people are like, no, this is a very private system. So we have ideas of what's happening, but there's still, who knows what's really happening.
Yeah. Go ahead, Conor.
Just going to add, and while we're focused on like self-custodial adoption and stuff, I think it's important to know that Lightning is a scaling solution that we know can only scale a few orders of magnitude above what we currently have, and so we are kind of seeing Lightning to some degree being positioned as perhaps like the glue between many different types of financial institutions and financial solutions as well. So it might be important to frame it in that context as well. But we hope to onboard as many people to be able to have the self-sovereign experience as possible.
And right now, the main narrative for Lightning is micropayments, right? What do you guys think are use cases that we don't see right now that we can see on the future for Lightning?
I've always sort of joked that it's not really like, it makes smaller payments than L1, and I think the initial, limitations were just because it was so new and we don't want people to lose money. But I think it can work for fairly larger size payments. Not like you're buying a car or a house, but I think we've seen the average payment value go up to like, the amount of like a dinner or something. It's getting higher, and I think it can scale that way pretty well. So between companies or between exchanges and stuff, I think you can definitely see it happen there. I think there's also, like, I can pitch other things, like discrete log contracts is another thing I've been working on, and I think similar to how we didn't really see, maybe this is controversial, but we didn't really see NFT kind of stuff going on in Bitcoin, but then this year it's like, oh wait, you can do that in Bitcoin. In fact, you can kind of do it better than in some other places. With discrete log contracts and some of the smart contract things that you can do in Bitcoin today, there may be another like, oh wait, you can do this in Bitcoin as well, or you can do this using Lightning in Bitcoin. So it's kind of interesting thing that sometimes it takes years where you've got papers, you've got some code, but it's sort of not really widely used, and then people find this use case again and start using it. So I think there's a lot of interesting things happening, around Lightning and with different smart contracts and stuff in Bitcoin that we're really seeing sort of a renaissance of discussion about new opcodes and just usages that we didn't even think of with today's opcodes. Like there's a talk today, I think, about BitVM. And it's like, oh, yeah, you can do that. It's maybe not the most efficient, but you can do a lot of things without even changing Bitcoin. So.
Yeah, my take is that kind of years ago I gave a talk about what I call small footprint things, and I think that, and what I mean by that is like doing smarter things with Bitcoin where the on-chain footprint is very tiny. So things like DLCs, things like Lightning, things like, in a way, ordinals is kind of like that. The difference between that approach to building applications and the Ethereum approach is the Ethereum approach is very fat footprint, very large footprint on chain. The benefit of the Ethereum approach is that it's extremely accessible to developers. It matches the paradigm that they're used to, and the barrier to entry to trying new things is very low. With Bitcoin, the way it kind of works is some developer has to have some insight and build the tools that unlock something for all the other developers who really aren't going to go that deep. So I would say, like, for example, like Casey did that with ordinals, and Tadge, and then the large team of people working Lightning today have done that for others. And what is that next thing going to be? Where all of a sudden the market goes, oh, where we all knew theoretically you could do this thing, but the normie sort of like realm didn't, and all of a sudden it's accessible to them.
Nice. And what about Lightning working as a payment rail for other layer 2s? Do you guys see that? Burak's talking about that a little bit on Arc. What do you guys think about this?
I mean, it's definitely the case. It's being used in things like eCash and Fedimints. Yeah, I touched on it earlier. It looks like it could be a positive direction where it's the glue for different financial institutions and stuff. So, yeah, it's still very early stages with regards to that. But a lot of developers I've spoken to who are working in the eCash, Fedimint, Cashew space do definitely deem it as a tool to help with the interoperability within these systems, which just adds, more utility and more use case for Lightning as well. So it's definitely something we're keeping a close eye on.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of the new ideas need new opcodes, whether it's opctv or any pre-vout or things like that. And so those are going to be more long-term. But even between, like, one of the initial ideas with Lightning Network, which we sort of pitched a lot back in 2015, 16, and no one cares now, but was interoperability between chains. Because at that time, like, everything was based on Bitcoin. So you're like, oh, we can trade Dogecoin with Litecoin with Bitcoin and have the network spanning multiple things. That never really took off because a lot of reasons, but it's still possible, and there's still ideas of like, hey, can we do trading between these different coins with Lightning channels and stuff. I don't know if that ever is going to, really become a utility, but there's ideas, we've talked to, even in like CBDC world, they're like, hey, can we use HTLCs in the CBDC? It's like, yeah, you could, and then you could sort of trade between the CBDC and Bitcoin or something. So, Lightning works on Bitcoin, and it's, that's its main usage, but it is sort of an open source software, and like anyone can sort of take it and use this functionality. And so there's a lot of, a huge amount of work has gone into all the code bases. If you want to take LND or LDK and put it on something else, you definitely can do that.
So was the question about Lightning with other chains or other L2s for Bitcoin? Or either?
Either, yeah.
Okay, I'll go with the latter. So my, I guess, maybe mildly controversial take is going to be that, well, one, I think it's really cool that people are experimenting with other L2 protocols, but I'm very skeptical, and I would probably love to be wrong, but I'm very skeptical anything really comes close to Lightning. I do think there are future insights yet to be had on how to scale Bitcoin layer 2. If I had to bet money, those insights are going to be shipped as updates to the Lightning Network, because protocol compatibility and just fitting into existing interfaces that people are already building on is how you distribute a new idea much more effectively. Starting from scratch again is, like, think of all of the time it's taken to go from the Lightning white paper that Tadge and Joseph wrote. What year? 2014?
2015.
2015.
A long time ago.
To Coinbase saying, "Oh, we're finally going to add Lightning." Right? It hasn't shipped yet, but it's like, let's say it ships next year. 9 years. 9 years, right? So if you're working on a new insight to scale Bitcoin, do you start working on something that an exchange might adopt in 10 years? Or do you try to bolt it on to something that's finally broken through?
Yeah, that's a lot of work for sure, and really bold to go work on other layer 2s with Lightning already working, I guess. So we talked about long-term Lightning, and what about near future? Like, we have Phoenix working with splicing, LDK just shipped Bo 12, LND is working on Taproot assets. What you guys are looking forward to see in the near future?
I can say it's near, but maybe a little further out is, like, the big change is going to be PTLCs. And that's, maybe not even next year, but they're, building up to that with Taproot channels, and PTLCs does really enable like a lot of cool things, but it's a big change. It's in some ways, I don't want to say it's a hard fork, but it's, as to the extent that changes happen in Lightning, and it's kind of like a hard fork because you can't really route an HTLC and then convert it into a PTLC and back. But I think that's one where it really enables a lot of new things, new privacy, and better verifiability of things. And then with Taproot channels as well, you can have these sort of nested multi-sig in a really compatible way. So like, I might have a node with just a single key and I'm signing, and the other node, it might actually be 3 of 4 multi-sig, but I will never know. It looks the same to me. So those, I think, they're hard. They're going to take, they're probably not next year, but maybe the year after, but I think it will enable a lot of companies and different use cases and better privacy that won't be super noticeable to people, but it'll just make it work a lot better.
I'd say one thing I'm excited about is managed services for developers. There's a whole host of, especially developers who want to create like self-custodial experiences, there's a whole host of infrastructure that they need to host just to enable an on-par UX to what most people are used to. So examples are like Lightning service providers. There's something called the LSP spec, which LDK node will be implemented and will enable, in just a few lines of code, a developer to connect to an LSP, various types of LSPs. we're excited about managed services around things that enhance privacy for payments as well at the client mobile level. So we have a protocol called Rapid Gossip Sync, which enables a mobile client to get an instant view of the Lightning Network and calculate routes locally on their phone, as opposed to offloading that to a server that will basically know all your payments. That will be in a managed service, and encrypted cloud backups as well for private keys and Lightning state management. So we're hoping we see some managed services come to the forefront in 2024 that developers can just, plug and play kind of vibe and get up and running quite quickly.
I'm excited about all of that very much. I am also quite excited about Taproot assets because I think even though it's still very TBD how this plays out, basically what it's doing is bringing dollars to the Lightning Network, which I think is a very interesting experiment. And I think there's still a lot to dig into there. I think one thing that a lot of people underestimate is that if you're running a routing node that has a dollar channel and a Bitcoin channel, you're actually running a trading operation, because any swap that you facilitate is actually really a trade to your balance sheet that you might need to offset. So I think this will actually, I think this will attract a new segment of people to the Lightning Network, and also maybe make Lightning a more compelling sort of profit-generating thing for people to invest in, especially exchanges and financial institutions. I do think it's still very TBD. Let's see. I'm excited to see an experiment like this play out.
And what about LN Symmetry, guys? Are we ever going to see that happen?
I think that's a good example of what you were saying, where you sort of build on top. Like LN Symmetry sort of is initially called L2, but now I think some people are calling it LN Symmetry to sort of say, yeah, it's a new version of Lightning. I think it's really cool work as well, and gives people more options. I will say I'm like a little biased because I kind of came up with the punishment mechanism in Lightning channels, and I do think that that's like the sort of Bitcoin security where if you try to steal my money, I take all of your money. It's not even eye for an eye, it's all of it. But I totally understand that actually in the real world, 99% of this happening is because of bugs or someone messed something up, and it almost never, no one's actually trying to steal money from other people in Lightning channels. It basically never happens because it doesn't work. You'll lose it all. So there's definitely a need to sort of have the sort of base core protocol is very adversarial and very sort of mean. And then on top of that, you can have things that are much more friendly. And I think LN Symmetry is a way where you can also, it does potentially simplify things. And I think that's more so than the lack of punishment transaction. Simplifying the state is much easier, because I work at a company with tons of really smart people. I'm working on this stuff for years, and still there's so many times where people are like, well, how come it did this? And I'm like, I don't know. It's a really complicated system with lots of different messages and sort of state machine. And so to the extent that we can simplify that, I think that's one of the most important ways we can get more people to use it, get it safer, things like that.
Okay, awesome. So that's our time. Can we have a round of applause for these great guys over here?